I haven't enjoyed every day of the job. That'd be disingenuous to say. It's in a community that's growing as fast as we are. It can be a very controversial and stressful job at times, but it does have a ton of impact on the community and our quality of life. And it's been a very rewarding job in that sense to, get to interact with a diverse group of citizens and stakeholders and elected officials, and really feel like I'm having a meaningful impact in our community. The day-to-day duties of the position really vary greatly. No 2 days are the same, and so it's very interesting in that sense. I never know what's going to come across my desk or email on any given day, and that variety definitely keeps things interesting, and just continuing to learn. So my name is Sean OCallaghan. I am the Chief Planning Officer for Gallatin County. I have been with the county for just a little over 19 years at this point, and I started the job soon after moving to Montana from the Lake Tahoe area. My wife and I were living there, and similar to some of the housing issues that Bozeman's facing now, we were priced out of the area where I more or less grew up 20 years ago. And we kind of looked all over the West at places that had a lot of the same recreational opportunities that we had there, but also had a vibrant economy. And Bozeman really spoke to us. And so we took a chance and moved here, and wasn't totally foreign to Montana. I'd spent a fair bit of time here recreating, and actually did an internship with Fish, Wildlife, and Parks one summer, but moved here and got ourselves established. And soon after moving here, I interviewed for a job with the Gallatin County Planning Department. My educational background was in conservation and restoration ecology, but through a planning school, so kind of more of a natural resource planning background. And that proved to be a good fit for some of the issues that Gallatin County was facing. And so I was surprised to learn that I got the job and started very much in an entry level, local government planner position, and processing, pretty simple ministerial type applications, not applications with a lot of discretion, in other words. And over the years, moved up through the ranks to a senior planner type position, taking on review of projects that were more complex and had more of an impact on the community, and eventually became the planning director a little over 10 years ago. So kind of started at the bottom rung of the ladder and moved my way up. And
not very many people can say that they have almost 20 years invested into a career. That's astonishing all of itself. Like, do you find that particularly rewarding, or do you see like an advantage or something that's come out of it that you didn't think was possible until you put so much time and effort into it?
so prior to working for Gallatin County, I worked, I worked for the federal government, the state government in two states, and now local government. And aside from my current job, all of my prior jobs were jobs out in the field doing, natural resource management work. And so I was actually terrified when I got my job of having an office job. I wasn't sure I was going to make it through the first week. And then I made it through the first week. And then the milestone was the first month. And it's pretty funny to look back on that now, almost 20 years later, and realize that I've grown accustomed to that. And I still do get to get out in the field, but not nearly as much as I used to be able to, or as I would love to be able to do. So my long tenure in my job, is not something that was a goal of mine, and it's caught me by surprise that I've been employed in the same job, not necessarily the same position, but I've worked for the planning department in Gallatin County for almost 20 years. Um, but it's pretty cool to be able to look back and see some of the various things that have happened over that period of time, and what my role has been. I've been involved in reviewing subdivisions that have been pretty significant projects, and some of those have been controversial and others haven't. So for example, the Black Bull subdivision in between Bozeman and Four Corners, that is a pretty high-end project, with a golf course and all sorts of amenities like that. We've been involved in those kinds of projects and a lot of the stuff that's happening up in Big Sky, as well as looking at projects in Big Sky is a great place to talk about in terms of the need for workforce housing up there, and what aspects of our local regulations are impeding the ability to develop workforce housing, and what barriers do we need to remove.
What is like your guys's steps to prevent Bozeman from becoming like Aspen or other cities where the workforce, like housing, is completely pushed out to another town?
Yeah, that's a really workforce housing is a really complicated conversation. It's complicated in the city of Bozeman, but it's even more nuanced and complicated at the county level, I would say. To really make a workforce housing project work, you have to be able to develop at a pretty high density. And more so than that, you really need a lot of services. You need access to, water and sewer utilities, a pretty solid transportation network, and ideally opportunities for public transit. And there's very few areas in the county outside of our municipalities where that kind of scenario exists. And really, Big Sky, which is a resort community, and they have their own water and sewer district. They have some transit opportunities down there in Big Sky that just serve the Big Sky area. Really, and a community interest in workforce housing has probably been where we've had the most success so far at the county level. And it's not necessarily because of anything the county is doing. We're supportive of these projects. It's because people have stepped up to the plate and said, I can do this project here. It makes sense. It meets this community need. Um, Four Corners is another area where there's a lot of interest in workforce housing. And quite frankly, we don't have the infrastructure or the services out there to really make a project like that work as well as, say, something in the city of Bozeman, where it's a much more compact community. People can meet their needs in a much shorter relative distance from where they live, and can live and work much closer to one another. So it's a really nuanced and tricky conversation, and something that we've still got a lot of work to do on.
Um, Kind of going around of what's kept. I'm really interested in here. Like you said, you couldn't even get through your like you didn't even want to get through your first week and then your first month. What what was it that kept you around?
I think what kept me interested in the job through the first week was it was sub-zero outside, and so I really enjoyed working in an office that was heated and nice and cozy. And I had some great colleagues that did I think a great job mentoring me and recognizing that I was eager to learn and build a knowledge base and kind of dedicated to public service. So that was very helpful in the early years. But you know, being willing to, I guess, work hard and take on a more complex workload and deal with some complicated projects where there was pushback from the public or an applicant or whatnot. It created a challenge, and I'm one of those people that doesn't usually shy away from a challenge. I like to be in challenging situations and learn something from the experience. So I think that presence of a variety in my workload and the challenges that exist there have been very satisfying. And it's also just a great community to work with, not just the citizens that we interact with, whether it's someone who's trying to build a home or someone that's concerned about a subdivision that's going on next to them, um, but also the culture of the county organization. Um, I was talking earlier about kind of frontline workers. There is really just a strong culture of people wanting to serve the public and do a good job at it, and it's a great team to be a part of in that sense. I can kind of speak to that at a couple different levels. Um, the county as an organization, like as a whole, um, I think we do a lot of really good and important work that benefits our citizens, but it's really only been in the last couple of years that we've made an effort of, we went out and hired a kind of communications person and making sure that that message is getting out there to our citizens, that they understand what we're working on, how we're doing it, what opportunities there are for the public to comment and contribute to projects. So, um, that's, I would say communication with our constituents is an area that there's still a lot of room for improvement, but there's a organizational recognition that it's increasingly important. And there's a number of ways, whether it's traditional town hall type public meetings or email listservs or now social media, to get information out to residents. And we've embraced that and are figuring out how to improve on it. And, the COVID pandemic is just one example of that. Not that I can take credit for it in any way, shape, or form, but the county health department, I think, has done a tremendous job in providing information that's updated daily to the public on a variety of dashboards that people can access. So communication is an area that I think we can improve on. And that kind of segues into the planning world, the world in which I operate. That holds true there as well. We have a major initiative that's coming to a close where we're updating our county growth policy, which is our kind of overarching land use document. It gives some data about what we've experienced over the past couple of decades, as well as looks forward about projects into the future. How we think we're going to grow in terms of population, and then provide some goals and policies to help steer us in that direction. And um, I would say we really have a forward thinking and fairly ambitious growth policy, much more so than the current document that's in place. And getting, I think, the political support for that, and really hearing support from community members about having a more robust and I guess progressive trajectory for growth and development, rather than sprawl, which is what we've seen a lot of over the last couple of decades, has been a big change.
Who are the ingredients to building a county? And that planning is obviously one of the forefronts of like kind of directing all of these actors and how we should integrate. Like if you just had to list everyone involved in making Gallatin County open up every day and close every night kind of thing.
You know, you have your various elected officials that are kind of dictated by state law, and you've got management at a few different levels. But I mean, the heart and soul of our organization is our frontline workers, and not just in terms of, you know, law enforcement and emergency responders and those kinds of folks, but, the day-to-day people that are coming in and helping public, register their vehicles, or out there grading roads, or helping you obtain a birth certificate or a death certificate, register to vote. I mean, those frontline people that our citizens rely on just for basic services are the heart and soul of our organization. There's a lot of thought and management that goes on to keep the county operating and headed in the right direction and fiscally sound. But none of that would really matter if we didn't have dedicated frontline staff, which is really where the rubber meets the road.
No, I totally couldn't agree more with you. Even like just servicemen like garbage and water and those guys help people function on a level they don't even appreciate on a daily
Oh
basis.
yeah, yeah,
Yeah,
absolutely.
no, I totally agree with you. Um, what was like when you first emerged yourself into this world, what was on your plate? What did you step into? Like, what did it look like now? Like, what were your problems and situations then, and what have you developed into over your career in Gallatin County?
Um, when I first started, I was working on pretty simple projects and applications, but I think a good sort of story about how things have changed over time is, 20 years ago, if we had a subdivision, even a small 5 lot subdivision, um, just a couple miles outside of Bozeman, our public hearings for that project would have quite a few people expressing concern about development and impacts on agriculture. And there was, I think, a very different feel to the community at that time and a level of concern about development. And today we could have a, you know, 200 unit project on that same piece of property, and we might only have, one or two people show up for a public hearing. Um, Gallatin County has really turned from um, an agriculture and somewhat rural community into an urbanizing county, and we're the fastest growing county in the state and have been for many years. And so the public expectations have changed. I think people realize there is going to be development, and that field they look out from their back window might not always continue to be a field that's got hay growing in it. It might have houses in it someday. But the public, I think, has also gotten a lot more savvy and is understanding and is interested in planning in a different way. They're participating in projects like our growth policy and providing public comment and being proactive, whereas that wasn't always the case, and not just relying on commenting on individual projects. So public expectations, though, are also a little different. As we've seen, um, some subdivisions in between Bozeman and Four Corners over time, we have residents that buy homes out there in the county, and they don't realize they're not in the city of Bozeman. They want to know, when the county is going to come and plow the street that goes in front of their house, and um, why it takes so long to get a fire truck to show up if they call 911, not realizing that they're only served by a volunteer fire district. So there are some hurdles to getting people to really do their due diligence and understand limited county resources that go along with buying a home in county jurisdictional areas, that we still haven't fully rectified, and how to communicate that to people in a good way. Yeah, one thing that's really critical in making the government work effectively, especially, well, at all levels of government, but it's easiest to do at the local government level, is for the public to participate. Um, we don't know if we're meeting the needs of our citizens if citizens aren't communicating with us and not giving us feedback. And so it can be as simple as writing an email to an employee like me. It could be emailing an elected official like a county commissioner. It could mean showing up at a public hearing on something and giving public comment. But we really, the people who show up and provide that comment really have a meaningful impact on the trajectory of our government. And that public participation is just so critical.